Okay. Wish us luck. All right. Hi, everybody. So here we are, winter berries, and sort of in developing this series, it's a lot of winter things, winter berries, winter ponds, winter different things. So I will start right off the bat that as I started putting this together, we're still in autumn. So really should probably be autumn berries. So, and I'll give you one little sort of academic slide here. What is a berry? So it turns out that all berries are fruit, but all fruit is not a berry. And a berry is fruit is the development of the ovary in the flower. And then depending on how many seeds are in that ovary and various other things, it can either be a hard fruit called a drupe, like a peach, or it can be a multi-seeded fruit like a berry. And there are lots of other things. And I am loose with the term on berries because the English language has been using berries as small, juicy fruits for longer than science has discerned the difference between the types of fruits. So that's it on what's a berry. But I did learn something in this, which maybe you all already knew, that bananas are considered berries because where their seeds are. And with that, we'll go on to our first berry of the season. And these are actually out right now. They're starting to wither. This is a fruit called Aronia. That's the genus name. And it's a chokeberry. And it's a small shrub. And it has these very dark little berries. They're very nutritious. You actually see Aronia juice in a lot of natural food stores, very high in antioxidants and all of those things. And the birds do, in fact, love them. And this is what they were looking like about a month ago. They were really, abundant in some places. And people can make jelly out of them and whatnot, but or you can eat them by the handful. But because they're a berry, they have a lot of little seeds inside. So sometimes those little tiny seeds get stuck in your teeth. So I suggest squishing them with your tongue and swallowing, no chewing. And here they are just starting to go by. This is kind of how you'd see them now if you were around the island right now, just starting to wither a little bit. But they're still going to be great dried food. So this is a wonderful food source for birds this winter. Here's and I'm trying to point out which of these, as we go through, are natives and which are invasives and or introduced. Barberry, Japanese barberry is an introduced, considered an invasive plant, but oh, isn't it beautiful? Right now, this is what it looks like. The leaves are sort of turning these beautiful sort of yellowish to dark red wine color. And it's low. Usually they're fairly low along the paths. And even though when I look at them, I go, oh, it's an invasive species. It's doing all kinds of out competing things that I would like to have there. It is kind of beautiful. And here's a close up in case you are wondering. Yes, it does have thorns and they're pretty prickly. But the fruit are beautiful. Little tiny red little berries. This was very popular as a horticultural plant. A lot of people planted these as hedges and in their yards. So birds do eat them. They're not their most favorite, but they will eat them and disperse the seeds. But like many, if not all things in nature, when you look at them closely, they're just beautiful. So each one of those little berries was once a flower. This is a little bit more well known to probably everybody, the northern bayberry, also known in the old days as wax myrtle or candleberry. This is a native plant and well known for its waxy covering. You can see on one of these right here, this berry's got a little bit of its waxy covering off of it, so you can get a sense of the depth of the wax that's coating these berries. And here's a few more of them just up close and in my hand. Even though it's in my hand, it doesn't mean I'm about to make a bayberry candle, because it takes a lot of bayberries to make a bayberry candle. A lot. Not that it couldn't be done, and my mother found it a very good occupation for 5 kids in the winter on Block Island. So, because by the time you had 5 kids out collecting enough bayberries, you had them entertained for a good week. So handy that way. Now here's a berry that maybe you've seen if you've gone walking in the clayhead trails. Maybe you haven't. And I know nobody can answer, but just think in your mind, do you know what this is? It's a beautiful little shrub, small shrub called the beauty bush. This is a horticultural. This was planted. This is not a, you're not usually going to find this in nature. And given how I don't know of any of these other than in this one spot at Clayhead, I don't think we're worrying about them dispersing and becoming an invasive plant. They're quite beautiful. I will say that I think the berries, and especially the apples, a lot of the fruit plants this year really had a terrific year. This is about the best this plant has looked in quite a while. And these are a little bit past, they've dry up. This plant, and you could come upon it if you were walking in the Clayhead trails, and people often will tell me about this beautiful plant that they took a few snippets from, and isn't it great, and what do I think it is? And yes, it is great and it is beautiful. It also does not react well to pruning. So when people take little snippets, if there are many in a season, it can, and a couple of years, it can be detrimental to the plant. And a couple of years ago, I thought this plant wasn't going to make it. And I think it got so ratty looking that people left it alone for a while. And this year it came back with some real beauty. Well named. It does not last long once picked. If you see this, enjoy it where it is, because if you put it in a vase in 2 days, it's withered and not nearly as beautiful as it is if you're coming along the Clayhead Trail and happen to find it. So thank you, Lapham family, for the beauty bush. Here's another one that you probably know, but maybe not in this form. Again, think to yourself, do you know this? This might give you a little bit more help there. This is the Asiatic Bittersweet. This is another invasive introduced species. It starts out with those hard yellow, all-encompassing little berries. This is the hard outer shell. And over the course of about a month, they'll go from this stage to fully open and losing their outer. So I have a series of photos now that'll just sort of take you through the last 6 weeks of the development of bittersweet on Block Island, which again is an invasive species. It's a pain in the neck to deal with, but it can be stunning. Here it is with a few open, a few not yet open. Here it is starting to really be open up close. Again, just everybody wants this as a centerpiece on their table in the fall, which is fine. Just don't put it in the compost heap when you're done, because it will flourish. And then eventually it starts, about now, it's starting to lose. And you'll notice the slide on the left, almost all the yellow that we saw at the beginning of the season is gone and been, the berry has dried and the husk peeled back and fallen off. The yellow has fallen off and leaving behind basically kind of ratty looking red. And this is how it looks now on Block Island. And this is just a reminder that this is a twining vine that climbs up over everything that you don't want it to: trees, stone walls, blackberry bushes, and is quite detrimental to the other plants, the native plants on the island. So controlling bittersweet is a really important thing. And when you can't control it, enjoy its beauty. Here's another plant a tree now that has some berries, quote unquote berries. This is the Eastern Red Cedar. I have these two pictures in here. For one, if you can tell, the one on the left is loaded with berries. The one on the right I like because it shows the deer browse line. So cedar, it's actually a juniper. It's in the juniper family, but most of us know it as red cedar or Eastern or Northern red cedar. And deer love it. So unless it got a good start away from deer, as this one did, so that it's pretty tall before the deer start browsing it, it doesn't have much chance of making it on Block Island anymore. But sometimes you find one that's been protected. And once it gets taller than this, about 3.5, 4 feet, then the deer can't reach the browse, and then you have from now on, this tree will flourish going upwards. But it does have berries. Well, at least we think they're berries, and there's beautiful sort of, they change in color. First, they're sort of a whitish blue, and then a light blue, and then they get sort of a grayish color. They start to turn a little bit brown. They're starting to change their shape a little bit. They're not so round, they're swelling up and getting more sort of nubby looking, and they're not actually berries. These are the beginnings of the cone of the cedar, the juniper tree, which we know is red cedar. But right now they're all in berries, and they're just going from the light blue to the sort of the more browny. And you can see up here where they're sort of divided in threes and are going to get very nubby like. So not berries, but berry-like. Now, and that sort of starts our little not a berry intermission. The island was loaded with crab apples this year. They were amazing. And this is one, and they have different colors, different forms, different size fruit. I have 3 different types I'm showing you now. This is one. I don't know exactly which one it is. Actually, maybe this is the one I do know. Yes, this is the Siberian crabapple. These are little tiny, but when you look back at it, at this, you can't tell what this is, how small it is. And then you get closer and closer and you see these little tiny, and these are crab apples. These are not berries. Their fruit is around the seeds rather than the seeds being throughout the fruit. And here it is up close, and they just hang down. This is about, tiny, maybe the size of my pinky fingernail, and very succulent, juicy. And of course, crab apples make terrific jelly if you have the patience. And they're so abundant this year, it's easy to have the patience to make crab apple jelly. But then there's another one. This is, I actually like this just because I like the form of this particular tree. It's at an intersection in the Clayhead trails. And it goes off this way, and then it goes off this way. And this year it is just loaded. It's heavy, heavy, heavy. If you look up in the branches, I know it's a little dark, but you look up in the branches, these are all berries. And these are about the size of maybe my thumb knuckle, maybe an inch and a half. They're beautiful and they are abundant, and they're still on the trees now. So if unlike the beautyberry, I'm not worried about you taking too many of these. You could take a bushel of these off of one tree and still leave bushels on the tree. The birds are loving this when they drop to the ground. The meadow voles and other critters also love them. Of course, deer love them. And they're just a painter, I think, an artist would love them. And this is the third of the type. And these were all taken in the Clayhead trails, except for one of the Siberian, which was taken actually. There are many of these around the Siberian ones, and you can tell their color. They have a very distinctive sort of deep red, sort of rosy, hazy color. And there's one on Ocean Avenue. Yeah, Ocean Avenue, right near the Dunn's Bridge, right near the Trimspond Bridge. But then I digress. That was the Siberian husky, Siberian crabapple. This one I don't know the name of, but this again, when I looked up in the canopy, it's loaded with fruit. And these are about the size of a golf ball. These are much bigger. It would take far fewer to get a good jelly, out of them, but they'd be delicious. All right, so ends the not a berry intermission. And excuse me. We are into the common Greenbriar, which is really thick, as you can see on the left, a thick, viney. It can make such a thicket you cannot get through it. Some animals that like to get away from predators, like nesting marsh hawk, can get through it, make a little tunnel and nest in there. It can be so difficult, but it does have beautiful berries, which we don't often see. Here's some, when you look close, you see these green, viney, sharp little thorns everywhere, and these small little blue fruits. And that's what they look like about, well, some look like this still now, and others previously, but some look like this, and they're going to be becoming more and more like this, where the leaves are starting to turn color and drop off and leave behind these great arches of fruit, which is also wonderful bird food. Again, like many of these small blueberries, high in antioxidants and lots of vitamins and minerals, which is great for wildlife. And I actually have a little centerpiece on my table right now made of these, because I just love the way these brown leaves are curling and the golden ones, and with the blue, it's just quite nice. So that's the common, it's a native plant, common greenbriar, sometimes known as catbriar or bullbriar. Excuse me. Haven't been talking this much lately. So this is another plant I newly discovered over the last year doing these Zooms, and this is a hawthorn. I believe this is cockspur hawthorn. There are many types of hawthorn, and it's really hard to tell the difference. This is where I wish I was a true botanist, because I could look at the fruit, the berries, quote unquote berries, and decide whether or not it was a common hawthorn or the cockspur hawthorn or the English hawthorn. I think this one is in fact the cockspur, which is a native plant, and but I haven't had quite enough confidence to name it. Again, this is what it looks like right now. This particular one is in Robin's Hollow, just near the beginning of the path. And you don't see it at first until you turn around and look back, and you see again this sort of haze of red, because the berries are so intense this time of year. One thing I noticed though is that the fruit is all on the upper half, and the bottom half is sort of no fruit at all. Now, I don't know if this is the normal pattern for this species, or if that's because it is just so thick and hasn't been pruned at all, other than by wind, and therefore the under part is just become too thick to get enough sunlight to produce the berries. I really don't know, but it has this wonderful form, and you can see in the distance where the top part is full of berries and the bottom part isn't. And but again, laden with fruit. And this is where I would divulge that this is not actually a berry. This is the type of fruit this is a pome, P-O-M-E, and that's the same as an apple or a pear or a crab apple. So this is, although well known in the literature as Hawthorne berries, and you're advised when you eat them to not eat the seeds, because there's a certain amount of cyanide in the seeds, although they make a wonderful, just don't eat the seeds, make the jelly, or the preserves, but don't eat the seeds. But hawthorn, it's hard to call them an apple or a palm. It's a hawthorn berry, even though um, doesn't. And just to give you a sense of the size, and just think of how this does look like an apple. This is the swollen ovary part of the flower, and these would have been the sepals and the petals, and the flower would have been going up this way. But notice the size of this thorn. These are giant thorns. They're bigger than what you would find, I believe, in a common hawthorn. And the name cockspur, if you know what the cockspur is on a male chicken, that big spur on the back of it, of the foot of a cock male chicken, is long and sharp and pointed, very similar to this shape. So I can understand how it would have gotten that name. But you have to be really careful when you pick these because these will impale you. So this is a good festive tree. This is the holly, American holly. This first photo, although a little dark, I like it because you have the holly in the foreground, and in the background you have Winterberry. And we'll be getting to that a little bit later, but holly and Winterberry are both in the holly family, and they both are the genus Ilex, I-L-E-X. And so I like this photo because it showed the two of them. And when you look at them up close at their various points, the holly, however, will stay green year round, whereas the Winterberry will not. But it's a beautiful plant. There are very few places where there are trees this large on Block Island. The American holly is a native, although it is also likes to be eaten by deer. Where you have big rows of holly on the island, of which I only know of very few, there's lots of young holly in the understory around it. So they do self-seed quite well. And they're amazing, but it's quite, I love the form of the trunk, kind of smooth and a little bit knobby, very distinctive look to it. Not unlike, I think, an elephant leg, or how I imagine an elephant leg would look. And of course, it's beautiful holly leaves and its berries out there. And holly, as is true with Winterberry, are dioecious. In other words, they have male and female plants. I should have said the same thing is true of bayberry. So when you see the berries, you know you're looking at the female plant. And if there are no berries, it's a male plant. Moving on from a native to a introduced invasive, Japanese honeysuckle, well identified by their berries that grow at the axil of the plant, usually in pairs. And these last two that I put up, actually, this first one, this shows them early on when they're still a little bit green. And this one shows them sort of fully ripe, nice and shiny. And these are too. I took these a little bit earlier this fall. These are pretty much withered and gone, although honeysuckle will keep its green leaves well into the winter, if not throughout the winter, although not quite as vibrant as these. They are used by birds, but not as sort of a last resort. So there is a native honeysuckle, very little of which is on Block Island. Almost all the honeysuckles you see on the island are either Moro or Japanese, and they are introduced and considered to be invasive. Although in this world of invasives over on Block Island over the last 10 years or so, where we're getting things like black swallowwort and Mila minute vine, I feel more kindly towards the Japanese honeysuckle because it doesn't seem nearly as detrimental as those others, and much easier to control. Not for one reason, it's not thorny, and for another, it's just it's not as you can pull it down and kind of nip it at its bud, if you will. This is a beautiful plant. This is considered this Multiflora Rose. And I didn't take this photo because you can see the fruit so perfectly. I took this photo because you can see the form of the fruit and of the plant itself. I just thought these were just beautiful form. I can big arching stem, and then the little the vines going off. Again, Multiflora Rose is introduced and an invasive, but compared to some of the other invasives, I guess I'm more kindly towards the Multiflora Rose. It can be controlled by hand. Mow it and chop it and put it away. Destroy it. But it has many good purposes. First of all, in June, when it is in bloom, it's heavenly on Black Island. Almost everything is draped with it, and you don't like to think of that, but it does make the place look beautiful and smell exquisite. And the fruit is, again, another very high source of vitamins and minerals for birds, winter birds especially, because they hang on to they stay on after the first frost. And you'll see robins and thrushes and sparrows and all of our land birds working their way and surviving on Multiflora Rose, which I can just see this little filigree screen as a beautiful piece of art somewhere. But here it is up close, and very many sizes, all kinds of different species of Multiflora Rose, from very little berries to much larger, and just so you know, they do also have pretty sharp thorns. And this is kind of how it looks now, starting to wilt and dry up a little bit, but still will be very nutritious, and lots of little forms of this. This is actually the same plant, and this is a different plant. They were growing in different forms, one more upright. So Multiflora Rose, also the fruit is referred to often as a hip. So when you hear about rose hips, it refers not only to beach rose hips, but also Multiflora Rose hips, and your domestic garden rose, the fruit is also called a hip, a rose hip. Okay, another little test, think in your mind. Do you know this berry? If I show you the leaves, does that help? Well, if you don't know it, you should learn it. This is poison ivy. And a lot of people don't know that poison ivy has these wonderful whitish cream-colored berries, which are just as irritant as the plant. Every part of poison ivy can irritate your skin. The berries, the leaf, the root, the stem. And I've gotten poison ivy from all of those parts because I just guess I'm a slow learner, or I needed to test it, or whatever. So I keep away from these. I take pictures, but I don't touch. But look at those berries. They're beautiful. The little white, and these are, I believe the cream colored ones are the husk, and that peels off and reveals the inner sort of grayer, whiter part. And but there's the poison ivy around the island right now is doing quite well as well. And again, it is a native species. Can't get rid of it because it's an invasive. It's a native species, and the birds do eat it, especially myrtle warblers, which can also eat bayberry, and they'll fall to the ground and be eaten by lots of sparrows. And so yes, poison ivy. And now we'll move to another sort of introduced species. I wouldn't say it's an invasive, but it's an introduced species. Most of you are probably familiar with privet, planted as a hedgerow, a lot of hedges, and also very well buried. you can see in the upper parts of this is the close-up of the top of this tree over here. And these are all berries. And after they lose their leaves, they'll still be hanging on to the berries. Again, another food source for birds. These stay on their branches quite late into the winter, so they'll be feeding birds and meadow voles and other things that eat berries for quite a while. And of course, one of my favorite things to see eating the privet, is the American robin, and they can go through and take almost all the berries off. I think by the time this bird got done, this was actually taken last winter. The berries in this area and these stems were all eaten. He just worked his way through and got them all. But again, it is a beautiful fruit. Here it is on the right, a little bit of greenish early on. They've just come past this stage, and now they're going more to the more full-on fruit, more ripened, not so green right now. And then these are all recently taken, and this is the stage they're at now. Nice, plump, succulent, not yet drying out. And you'll see lots of individual privet trees as well as hedges throughout the island. That's a great pollinator in the spring. If you walk by a hedge of privet, you'll notice its fragrance, which I, for one, can't stand, but besides smelling that, you will hear that the privet hedge is abuzz with bees. The bees just love this. So it's a great pollinator plant. One of my favorites is winged sumac. This is a native plant, and it does produce these beautiful sort of cornucopia of these red, little bit hairy berries. And again, wonderful food source for birds and other animals. And you can tell that birds are primary in my life, right? I forget about all the others. There's birds and other animals. But anyway, the winged sumac berries are quite beautiful. And this is what they're looking like right now. They will dry out and turn sort of a raggedy looking white, but usually they're all eaten before most of them turn white. And just to show you why it's called winged sumac, is that the thick part of the rib of the leaf, this is actually one leaf, these little ones are leaflets, is thick, it's winged. It's as if it has sort of, think of the squid wings on a squid, the fins on either side. So this is winged sumac. There are other kinds. It is not, people say sumac poison. No, not really. A beautiful midwinter or early winter, I would say early winter foliage and berries. A nice walk out at Rodman's Hollow will find these quite evident, as well as other places around the island, clayhead trails as well. These happen to have been taken. I think all three of these were taken at Rodman's Hollow. Our only flower picture in the series today is Viburnum or arrowwood, and I do that just to show that this is a panicle of flowers. That's the whole form. Each one of these individual white sort of 5-sided parts is the flower, and each one of those flowers will turn into a berry. And this is the Viburnum or arrowwood. These are pretty much all dropped off. There's a few of these. You can see these aren't full. Maybe a month ago, the whole panicle would still be full of berries, but they drop off as soon as we get any cold weather. I think we've only had one small frost, so things are still pretty intact, but these are starting to drop off. I had to work pretty hard to find some. I found a lot of the red stems without the berries, but again, beautiful, the color combination, the form, and again, a native plant that is well used, especially during migration for migrating songbirds. Very well known for the amount of energy that is held in antioxidants, which is a very important part of the sort of the chemistry, digestion chemistry for songbirds that can turn the sugars and the carbohydrates into fats to fuel their long distance migration. And I won't get too chemistry on you there, but here's an interesting plant. I think I only know where there's one of these flowering. I used to know where there were several, but they seem to have gone away. It's a interesting kind of, I think it's a little raggedy looking, these little pink flowers. Not all of these that are growing have flowers, and sometimes not as thick as this one. This is a plant called burning bush, or wahoo. Sometimes it's called wahoo, and it's a euonymus. And I believe this is the winged euonymus, but I'm not exactly sure which euonymus this is. But look at that berry. It is beautiful. It's a color you don't see often, at least on Block Island berries. Oops, backwards. And you'll see the shape from above and from the bottom. And then as you can see the form, how it hangs down. So just a beautiful, incredibly wonderful pink color. And these will pop open and split apart. And you can see there's a couple of these. This one's starting to split apart. This one's already split apart and lost its inner seed. And here's one still holding its inner red seed. Now, I thought this was an introduced horticultural plant, and it probably was planted, but it may be the native variety. And this is, again, where I wish I was a little bit more of a botanist. There is a native burning bush, also known wahoo euonymus. But there are several that are not native. So I'm not exactly sure which one this is. Based on the shape and the finely toothed edge of the leaves, I believe this is the native, but I can't say for sure. And if it is, I got to figure out how to grow some because it's beautiful. And the few places where I've known it in the past, I only know of it at one place now. It takes a little bit of, it gets very wild looking. People tend to hack it off in their pruning. So, but some of these, I think all of the beauty bush and this, and maybe there was one, maybe there wasn't. Well, these two at least I know are in the Clayhead trails. I know they were planted, but I don't know for sure that this is not a native. It may have been purposely planted because it is a native. And if you find it, don't pick it, just take the photos. And then finally, the namesake, Winterberry, also known in Rhode Island as black alder. Ilex is the genus, just like holly. And this is two pictures of the same area taken early in the Winterberry season. Winterberry is sort of like the bittersweet, progresses through a pretty long period of time. I like this picture because it's showing Winterberry in three different stages. Here it is, lost its leaves, same over here. This one still has leaves and hardly any berries. And then back in here, it's got both leaves and berries. And that's what this close-up shows as well. And this is exactly the same edge of the same pond. So there's a lot of variety. Of course, variety is not only the spice of life, but that's what keeps evolution going, so that when there's some variety that maybe is better adapted, you don't lose the whole bunch. But these are all bearing and losing their leaves at different times. And this is about at least 6 weeks ago I took this photo. And now we're progressing through the Winterberry season. This shows some of the early berries. You know, they start off as green. Again, tassels are between the leaf and the stem, just like holly, not surprisingly. And then they'll ripen, but the leaves will still stay on the stem. quite beautiful again, very similar to the holly, but there are far more Winterberry on Block Island than there are holly plants, American holly. And they are at their peak right now, I would say. They are, right now, they've gotten to the stage where they've dropped their leaves and they're just these beautiful gray, sort of expansive vase-like shaped shrubs filled with these beautiful red berries, and just sort of jolly and happy and evocative of the season. And again, an important winter food source for many, robins especially, I think of thrushes, and this mockingbird only stopped long enough eating the berries for me to swallow so I could get this photo before it went back to picking berries, winter berries, and eating them down. And with that, we'll end with Winterberries. And I thank you for your attention and wanting to know about berries of Block Island. And I'm sure I've missed many. I try to do the ones that are of this season. I thought I would get autumn olive berries and Virginia creeper berries, but they are well past. So I know I'll have to take their photos earlier in the season next year. I will stop sharing my screen and happy to take questions.
Thanks, Kim. That was great. Beautiful, beautiful photos. I just love the close-ups.
Yeah, they're fun.
I have seen beauty bush on the Payne Road trail.
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay.
You know, by Linwood's house, you know.
Yeah.
And then I also have seen it in a deep hollow in Enchanted Forest Trail.
Great.
Wow.
Just one big sizable clump in each place.
Nice.
Anna, do you have a question?
Yes. I was told that Celastris, what's it called? I forget. The invasive is something that pheasants like to eat, both of them being initially from Asia. Is that true?
The bittersweet, the Asiatic bittersweet.
Yeah.
Yes, it is true. And bittersweet berries will fall to the ground. And I know at least one hunter, I'm sure there are many, who stake those areas out so they know where to look on Pheasant Day. And I guess the theory is, and I think it's a very good hypothesis, that because they're both origins or they're both introduced species from the same area in Asia. So it seems likely that that they're well adapted to each other. So thanks.
I had at one point, I don't know if they're still there, I saw 7 male pheasants simultaneously on my property. And since then I've seen a number of, they're males together, and sometimes there's a female, but the females are so well camouflaged that sometimes I don't catch sight of them unless they move. But I have them, and I don't allow hunting of pheasants on my property. Deer, yes.
But not pheasant. And do you have a lot of bittersweet?
Oh yeah. I'm on Block Island. Yes. Yes. I have that, and I have rose hips and greenbriar and probably poison ivy, but not too close to the house. But yeah, I'm sure I have everything, including I planted a red cedar. I didn't know that they were fodder for deer. I have a very, very big one, which is not available to the deer, but the young one I planted, I didn't know, so I didn't protect it with a cage. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Maybe it'll go unnoticed amongst all the other good stuff.
I hope so. Yeah.
Kim, one thing I mean, obviously the connection with birds is always there. And I love sort of the bits about just talking about how this is an important, these bushes are important habitat for birds, for, you know, for their nutrition. And I was just wondering if people it used to be like Rhode native used to be available to be able for people to want to plant actual native shrubs, because when you go to nurseries, you can't
Right.
get them. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, it's really hard to get them. And Rhode native was a great project, but very costly to make happen. And they are no longer providing natives. But what Rhode native was doing was, for anybody who's not familiar, they were taking the seeds from the plants right in their areas in Rhode Island. So you could get the ecotype of a native plant in South Kingston or Block Island. And, you know, I have planted many of the flowers, especially butterfly bush, from seeds. It's not butterfly bush, sorry, butterfly weed, from the seeds from that were, you know, grown out from Block Island plants. But they're not doing that anymore. It's very difficult. I know that there's I've actually been working on trying to find some sources for this, and probably will try to publish something in the paper in this spring. But there is a nursery on Long Island that is doing a lot of these growing out of natives. It's very time consuming. And the Long Island habitat is very similar to Block Island. In fact, when we talk about Block Island being one of the last 12 great places, that designation is in conjunction with Long Island. So it's recognized even by the Nature Conservancy as part of the similar ecotype. There's a new homeowner on Block Island who's working in Connecticut with native plants and growing out native plants. And I hope to make some more networking with her to see if there's some sources there too, because I would love to be able to find a way for Block Island to get true natives, not quote native Eastern red cedar that was grown in Michigan. It's close, better than Western cedar, but it's not the same ecotype. And you know, that's diversity based on place. Okay, that was probably too big an answer, sorry.
No, sorry, Kim. Yeah, no, does anyone else have any questions? I'm just looking back here in the chat if there's anything. You answered a lot of these questions about poison ivy. Yep, it's eaten by.
I need to plant a memorial something that has berries on my property for someone's ashes to go. And a plant was already planted and the deer ate it. So I want to be real careful about that. And so do you think Winterberry is pretty safe not to be immediately killed?
Winterberry is pretty good, but Winterberry does like to have its feet wet. So it can do well on dry, high and dry parts. But if you can put it somewhere where there's some moisture,
what would go in a high dry part?
What would go in it? Well, I think winged sumac might be a nice option.
Thank you.
Yep. And I would say that I have planted Winterberry in what's relatively high and dry, and it does all right, just needs to baby it along and make sure give it water in a dry summer until it gets well established. But it doesn't, a lot of times what looks like high and dry on Block Island isn't necessarily. There may be a little underground, you know, dampness, but be careful about, and where there's clay, there tends to be a little more water. So clayey soil might do a little better. I wouldn't say absolutely not on the Winterberry. I would just say
winged sumac. Winged sumac is what I said. Yes, yeah. We'll go with that.
Go with that. Try it out.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Well, with that, Kim, you have, the plan is going forward doing 2 a month, correct?
Right. Yep.
And I should have looked at my calendar before we joined this, but can you tell us when the next one is?
It is January. I don't know the date. It's around this date because it's the
Hold on, let me look at my calendar.
second Wednesday,
It's the
right?
12th.
12th, right? So it's close. And it's going to be, it says winter birds, and I really should say that it's going to be winter birds and feeders. So I'm going to be concentrating on the birds that you can see in your feeder, at your feeder.
Okay.
So that you don't have to go too far afield to look for these. And I'll be talking a little bit about bird feeders and types of bird feeders and things like that.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks
And then we'll
everyone
be
for joining. Oh, go ahead, Kim. Mhm.
No, and then we'll be alternating between a subject like birds to an actual walk. So the walk later that month will be from the New Harbor to Beacon Hill over the Greenway Trail.
Great. Sounds good. Anyone else have any other questions or comments? Nope, just a thank you. Okay, well, thanks everyone, and
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see
enjoy
you all.
and best wishes for the holiday season. Okay, all right, take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it.